So, when Carolyn asked us to come and have a chat with you all, she just said, tell a couple of things about your journey so far this year. And, when we stopped and reflected on what we have achieved in a very short time, we're really quite happy with the little journey that we started this year. And it all did start with the intention that we wanted to really focus on our student-centred assessment. And so, as a reflection of what we intended through our annual action plan, we looked at the intended outcomes, and this is the last year in our cycle. So we really wanted to give it our best shot in getting all those outcomes that we came up with, 3 years ago. So our intended outcome in learning and teaching was that student engagement in learning will improve, and our actions to achieve those were to increase teachers' capacity to use data to develop learning intentions and success criteria, and to provide feedback to all students. Also to continue to familiarise with the Victorian curriculum, and we thought this was a great vehicle, a great way to become familiar with the Victorian curriculum. And also looking at student well-being, the intended outcome was that student well-being would be strengthened. Again, our actions to support that would be to continue to improve student engagement by personalising learning and allowing for more student voice in their learning. Making connections to the general capabilities of the Victorian curriculum by ensuring that social and emotional learning is evident at the planning stage of our inquiries. To further develop and embed practices that assist students to understand their own learning, that is, students regularly setting goals that relate to learning intentions, and that students understand success criteria, engage in reflection, and identify what learning has been achieved. And lastly, to ensure that there is a strong whole school focus on student self-reporting and providing students with effective feedback. So these are quite big actions, but as we've launched into it this year, we realise how beautifully they all overlap and support our assessment. And where we, as I said, we started off with the intention to improve our student-centred assessment. So Carolyn's now going to describe how we've journeyed so far.
Okay, thanks, Camel. I'll just preface this with the fact that the last semester last year, and this is from our student wellbeing hat, we are a Kids Matters school, so we've done a lot of professional learning in social and emotional learning. So staff were really on board with that and had a lot of knowledge about social and emotional learning and how it linked in with the personal and social capabilities. So our goal for the professional learning for this year was to prepare staff for the new report format and for student-led conferences in June. Our strategic actions, the first day back of school, second day actually, was a school closure day with Jenny Wilson. She identified the characteristics of an independent learner, and together we explored student-centred assessment as a vital element of independent learning. Following that, for the rest of the term, we had quite a few staff meetings that reinforced that notion. So we did some further professional reading and viewing around learning dispositions. The staff consensus on adopting the Kath Murdoch Learning Assets Framework, and there's a picture of it there, that's the model there. And she calls them learning assets, but we decided we were going to call them learning powers. And this then became our Bible. If anyone hasn't got it, they need to get it. It's fantastic. It's Kath Murdoch's new book, Power of Inquiry. And there's a whole chapter in there, sorry. I'm not used to being filmed. Whole chapter in there on learning assets. So it's a great one to unpack with your staff. So we now had our learning powers that we were trying to, actually I'll go back, we were trying to build the language about learning to learn in the whole school so that we had common understandings and common language. So that students would be able to, when they're doing their student-led conferences, they'd be able to have the language to explain their learning to their parents. We also explored the concept of split screen learning from Guy Claxton, those learning intentions where there's a focus on the content and or the skill, and at the same time a focus on the learning to disposition. So we tried to have learning intentions that were about what we're learning about, what we're learning to do, but also what we're learning to be, whether that's being collaborative learners, whether it's being self-managers, thinkers, what else have we got there? Can't read it now. Communicators and researchers. So they're the five that we chose. Okay. Then we spent some time, we unpacked the learning power of collaboration together. And in Kath's book, she actually spells out collaboration. We found in Victorian curriculum, collaboration was very generic, and so we really needed some success criteria around collaboration, and she does unpack that really well in her book. So we used that, and each level took the success criteria that they were going to concentrate. So we came out with a scope and sequence around collaboration, and we decided that students would set goals around collaboration for this term last term and this term, which would then they would share with their parents in their student-led conference. So we're doing very small steps for staff as we were going along the journey. We also shared the new report that we were going to introduce in June. We shared the reporting student progress and achievement guidelines and showed examples of the new report format we were thinking about, and staff were very, very keen to use that, and they were definitely on board. In-level inquiry planning, we asked staff to use a common planner where they were actually writing intentions for dispositions as well as for the skills and the content that they were going to be teaching. Then in this term, we had a whole school closure day at the beginning of the term where staff generated report indicator statements all ready to go, and they were very positive about that. And then the last probably 4 weeks, we've been looking at things, the portfolios, our student portfolios, because student-led conferences, obviously, we needed to look at our portfolios. They have a different focus now. They're all about student growth and progress. The students will be using their portfolios to show that, show their goals, and show evidence of how they've grown. So level planning was, we were given time to address that and what that might look in each level. And then also we, of course, explored a student-led conference and what that might look like. So we looked at a whole lot of different resources, and we looked at what that might look like from the different perspectives of teachers, parents. What would a teacher be doing? What would a student be doing? What would a parent be doing? And from that then, the staff worked in levels to decide what a student-led conference would look like in their level, and then also developed a timeline. So that was the last thing we had. On Tuesday, all staff now have developed a timeline for how they'll implement student-led conferences.
And just, I suppose our own feedback through all this work was that the timeline reflected a lot of the understandings and the language that had been weaved through all of this process, and it was like, wow, you know, it's all sitting there now. Everyone seems to be quite comfortable with it, because along the way, whilst I think as leaders I know that we think they get it, or we think we've supported along the way, it's sometimes when you actually dig a little bit deeper that you realise that maybe you didn't hit the mark with everybody, and we certainly discovered that as we went along. But I think doing this in a very focused and in a very supportive way has certainly allowed everyone to take those steps, and a little bit of catching up for some.